Shwmai a croeso cynnes, and welcome to the What's Your Story podcast. I'm James Owen, a Welsh filmmaker and storyteller, and I'm passionate about sharing stories. This podcast is all about business owners sharing their journey, and we'll be speaking with directors, entrepreneurs and creatives from all across Wales to learn from their experiences. We believe everyone has a story to tell. What's your story? Shwmai a croeso cynnes, a warm welcome to the next episode of What's Your Story. And today I have a very curious human being in the room. Adam Brooks. It's a pleasure to call him my business coach. He is a coach and facilitator, and really excited to unpack some good stuff in this conversation today. Adam, thank you for coming down.
Oh, you're welcome, mate. My pleasure. And genuinely, I love the podcast. It's an honour to be on here. I love listening to people's stories, the origin stories and stuff, but also just how you relax into the conversation with them. You really bring out some gold, mate. So hopefully you will today as well.
Oh, let's hope so. We've set the bar. No, thanks. I really enjoy these. You know, it's a passion project for me.
But you can see it and you can feel it and you can hear it when you're listening to it. So it's good.
Good, thanks. So, yeah, for those listening and watching, can you just explain to the audience, what does your sort of day-to-day look like? Who is Adam Brooks and what does Adam Brooks do?
Great question. Well, firstly, I'm a father to two biological children and then two stepchildren. So I'm a lover of life, and I've built my life and my businesses around that. So that's the key thing. So making sure I've got the time and the energy and the fitness and the health and the finances to kind of enjoy my life. I'm not a flashy guy. I like simple things. So time on the beach, time at the mountain, time out in the back garden, listening to nature. And when I'm not doing that, I'm supporting people in business and in life to be better versions of themselves. So challenging them, digging them in the ribs, having some fun with them, giving a bit of a kick at the backside and a cutch, as we like to say.
Given me a few kicks up the backside, haven't you?
Yeah, there'll be some more to come, mate, I'm sure. I'm just looking at your strategy plan for the quarter, so yeah, I've got some good insight.
Good insight. Oh, fantastic. So yeah, you're to me, you're my business coach. You're a friend. Growing up, did you ever think that you'd be a business coach?
No, not at all. Interestingly, I think I developed the skills of a coach as a 5-year-old, because I've always been that curious little kid. I've always been the one that's like pulling on my mum's dress, asking questions. Yeah, but why? So probably that annoying little kid, who's always asking why. So I'm asking questions and then going deeper on the answers, because I never really got substance. That's what I felt. And I don't know what I'd be labeled as back then, probably spirited. These days, it'll be all sorts of different badges, but this operates really fast. And then this operates equally as fast, but without a filter sometimes, quite a lot of the time. So that opened up lots of conversations and challenges, by the way. But my mouth kind of got me out of all problems, and it got me into just about. So
growing up in Gloucester, which side of the Severn River were you?
Yeah, interesting one. So I grew up in a beautiful little village called Newnham-on-Severn. So if you look at the map, you'll see the horseshoe bend of the Severn. I grew up on the Gloucestershire on the Gloucestershire side, but close to the Forest of Dean. I just want to say 1.25 miles outside of the Forest of Dean. Anyone knows the area, they'll know why that's important.
Why is that important? 1.25 miles?
I'm not going to mention web feet or anything like that, but there's some ancestral things that go on in the Forest of Dean that if you've ever seen Deliverance, But no, I joke. It's a beautiful part of the world. In fact, nowadays the Forest of Dean is a really, really sought after place to live and be, and it's a gorgeous part of the world. It's just very cliquey. So back in the day when I was growing up there, it's like 4th generation, you're still not accepted. So do you know what I mean? It's one of those kind of places.
Brilliant. And school. Tell me about school, because were you somebody who did well at school, finished with your GCSEs, your O-levels?
Yeah, I did 9 GCSEs. My highest grade was D in art.
You're very creative then.
Yeah, that's really my only talent, mate, I think. No. Yeah, I hated school, hated it. I was bullied by my headmaster at primary school, singled out, isolated and bullied. I remember because I was shorter, and every morning assembly, he'd make me stand on a chair, he'd single me out, and he'd pull a chair out, and he'd make me stand on a chair while we sung hymns and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, I take possibly out of it. It's a good reason why I have a challenge with authority and always have done, but a purposeful challenge.
Yeah.
But I don't just accept somebody with a white coat or somebody with a stethoscope or somebody with a positional title that they know what they're doing just because they got there. So I don't come at it from an arrogance point of view. I just come at it from a curious point of view. But I definitely know there's a tone of, I don't like authority. Because the people that were in authority, I had very little respect for them because of the way I was treated by them. So it went through primary school, my headmaster, and then in secondary school, my tutor, who was also my maths teacher and my IT teacher. Literally, the baton just passed on. So, and it took me a long time to realize that I kind of took the baton from my headmaster and gave it to my tutor, because a lot of that responsibility sat with me as a bit of the victim in that. But it takes a lot of understanding of psychology and behaviors and all that to really start unpicking all of that. But yeah, I hated school. I couldn't wait to go. I got a job lined up from a summer holidays job. I went to college to do a business studies course purely so that I could do work experience in the police, which I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be a copper from a very young age. So I did my work experience, and that kind of ticked a massive box for me. And as soon as I did that, I disappeared into the employment world and never looked back.
Ever look back?
No.
So you want to be a police officer, because I think that's quite a common thing for most people growing up. I want to be a fireman, I want to be a policeman, a doctor. It's one of those things. What is it about the police that maybe you feel that was it the work experience just really taught you that actually I don't want to be a police officer?
No, the work experience ticked it. I did. It was as I went through application to join the police, and I failed a sit up, and then I tried again, and then I got told I was too shy, which was nonsense. You've known me for a little while, you know.
You're not shy?
No, you can challenge my academic ability, but shyness, do one. You know what I mean? Jog on. So I literally drove away from the test centre frustrated, but I knew there was a company that had a government contract working with offenders, and I drove down, just knocked on the door, and like Yossa Hughes for the older crowd will remember this, Boys in the Black stuff. I just knocked on the door and went, "Gets a job." And they heard me out. We had a conversation, a really purposeful conversation that then turned into an interview, which then turned into an offer to join them on the custodial stuff. Wow. So, yeah.
That wasn't, you applied for a job, you literally knocked on the door.
Yeah. And then, well, this is how old it was, how long ago it was. During the conversation, the guy that opened the door to me was an ex-Avon and Somerset Police, fairly high up, sort of chief constable. So he gave me the time of day, and meanwhile he introduced me to another guy, Roger, and then they faxed the Home Office and said, "We've got a young lad here. He's not 25, but he's really keen, and if we want to put him through training, can we get some dispensation? Can we get some sign-off?" And they faxed back and said, "If he passes the training, we'll badge him." So I became, I think, the youngest badged prisoner custody officer at 21. Like, you had to be 25, so not bad for a shy lad.
That is pretty good.
But yeah, great experience, mate. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Every day was different. You kind of get into this. You're working in police stations, courts, prison establishments. You're dealing with people that, some of them hate you because you're part of the system. Some of them are in that rehabilitation period where they really want to be out of the system. And you see really curious things, like you'll see people coming from a double A cap prison or an A cap prison, which is like high category, so really potentially difficult offenders, but the regime is really, really tight. And then as they get towards the end of their sentence, they'll move them to a lower category, like a C, like an open prison. Okay. And then you get people that go, "I don't know what to do, because I'm normally being told when I can go to the toilet, when I can do this, and then in the open prison, they've got life almost given back to them. And some of them struggle with that because all of the routine's gone. So the rehabilitation piece fascinated me. And because I've been studying psychology since I was about 14, I just, people, behaviors, everything. I was pinging, absolutely pinging. So hit my sweet spot. And I just started to grow. I got into the training of all the custody officers, and then a contract for electronic tagging was in its early phases. So I got involved in that and wrote all the paperwork for the field stuff, and got promoted through that into leadership. So I had my first proper leadership role in team when I was 22, and I think I inherited 70 odd staff. Just flew to Glasgow, blagged the interview, flying back, realised I got to deliver tomorrow.
Wow.
So yeah, and it was straight in the deep end. Two of my managers I inherited went for my job and didn't get it. They were twice my age. So I'm this little upstart that doesn't know anything, and I got the job that they wanted. So they weren't really working with me in the early days. So the coaching skills, to go back to your question, really started to come in because I had to deliver, but it wasn't about me. I had to deliver through people. So I would suggest the selling skills and the coaching skills came through my career based on putting myself above, sticking my head above the parapet and just taking opportunities. and putting my name out there and taking risks, because I didn't have academia on my side. I didn't have degrees and qualifications. So I just had to, I hate the word hustle, but I had to. And it worked, because every time then I had to grow in the delivery phase.
So looking back, you could almost see your coaching skills being honed and tested in that sort of environment. As somebody who's trying to rehabilitate prisoners, offenders, I don't know the terminology. Well, they are a prisoner if they're in a prison. What as somebody working in that sort of environment, did you're almost starting to coach these people in their personal lives, isn't it? Behaviors and things. You looked into psychology, and that really fascinated you. Yeah, you're trying. Your job was trying to coach them to be better human beings.
Yeah, seeing where the opportunities were, because it wasn't just the individual, but as soon as somebody comes off license, so the scheme was basically home detention curfew. That's what it was classed as. So they release them earlier from prison, electronic device on their ankle, monitoring unit in the home, and they're effectively within a virtual prison from, say, 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. and then they got the time to go out in the daytime and blah, blah, blah. But what it does is it changes their relationships with their friends, because they can't go out in the evenings messing about. It changes their relationship with their family and everything. So you're seeing opportunities with the individual and their families where they really want change. Because some of these kids have grown up in, and there's a sadness in this, like, their brothers have gone to prison, their uncle's gone to prison, their dad, their granddad.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, I remember going into some guy's house, and I've signed the Official Secrets Act years ago, so I'll be careful what I say. But I remember going into some guy's house, and he sat on the sofa hugging a motorbike engine, not his wife. And this is the dad and the kid. You could see the depth of sadness in his eyes, that he just wanted out of that environment. But it was the only dwelling that he could be released to directly from courts. So he was sentenced directly from courts to this scheme, which was a new part of the trial. But everyone in his family wanted him to go to prison to become a man. And it's like, you're fighting generational thinking then. And it's like, can we find any light in the dark to just prise open a little bit of conversation, a little bit of difference, to give him some hope and some support? And that for me was amazing. You'd go back sometimes and you'd see they'd reconnected with their kids. They decorated their property, and it was completely different from when you went in 6 months ago and stuff. And you could physically and tangibly see people turning their lives around. And sometimes it was just their circle of friends, like, "You coming out, mate? I can't. I'm on tag." So slowly but surely, their friends would stop asking, and that circle of friends would change, and their priorities would change with it. And it's like, that was a big sell to encourage people to buy into that and their family and everything else. But the impact was massive. So yeah, from a personal point of view and contribution, that was huge. Loved it.
Yeah, that sounds like an
and
immense...
terrifying some days as well, mate.
I bet, because they're probably, some of them, or most of them, might have been a bit bigger than you as well.
Yeah, I think everyone thought I was Bruce Lee, because I'm little and I'm wiry. So what was all that about? Yeah. But yeah, you in prison and police complexes, you've always got like panic buttons, lockdown. You've got riot shields. You've got all the tools and the team if you need it if something kicks off, and you're trained in all that sort of stuff, and it becomes like just everyday life. But when you're going into someone's home, when you read stats like 98% of murders are domestic related with household implements, it kind of puts a little bit of I fear for the BT engineers and the gas guys who are going into everyday circumstances of domestic violence and stuff like in homes, and you could be the one person that they could take it out on. It's crazy. Yeah. But these things happen, and it's like a bubble that we walk around in our lives in a bubble, not thinking or seeing or feeling this. So you have to be on your A game. You never know what you were walking into. And bearing in mind, we were doing that at 1 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. The diesel engine were waking up the neighbours. You're not necessarily in a pleasant area. Baseball bats are flying here, there, and everywhere. It was sometimes crazy. And we would go single-handedly to places where they wouldn't send a riot van of police, So it was squeaky bum time, as we call it. But again, you have to grow in that space. So you learn a lot about you. You learn a lot about people. You learn a lot around your exits. I've already checked mine out as soon as I came in the room. It's an old habit that never dies.
Wow.
It's that kind of stuff. You're just on it, but it's a buzz. Yeah. But with 4 children now and responsibilities, I wouldn't do it for love nor money.
Wow. Earlier you touched on in school, you had an issue with authority.
Yeah.
Working in those sorts of environments, which would have been an immense privilege for you, helping people, especially coming out of these really difficult situations and the wrongs they've done. They're starting to turn their lives around. How did you look at authority when you were then dealing with these people? Because ultimately, authority is a good thing, right? It's there for a purpose.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can go against it, but I think it's something that I've had experience in. Sometimes it's misused or abused, but authority, I think it is important.
Absolutely.
So for you growing up, having the almost like the rebel against authority, because you've then almost got to enforce something that
Yeah.
they've got to respect you,
Yeah.
haven't they? And you're there to do a job and to try and help them.
Yeah.
So there's got to be almost an obligation to their authority in you.
Yeah. It's not just an interesting question. It's a great question, right? Because it's, how is authority wielded? Right? How is power wielded? And it's like, you give somebody a high vis jacket and they'll just, sort out traffic and stuff like in the case of a road accident. Other people turn into Adolf Hitler. And I don't know if we can even use that name on the...
Excuse me.
But do you know what I mean? It's like some people just turn into the wrong kind of character when they put on a high vis. And it's like, that's already in them. You know, when you hear people say money changes people and alcohol changes people, it's like, doesn't it? Just accelerates who they already are. It doesn't change them. They're already that person. So a high vis jacket is kind of similar. So to go to the question directly, for me, it was two things. I've got a real big value of belonging, which came through the isolation of being bullied from authority figures in a young age and stuff like that. So belonging is massive to me because I know what isolation feels like. But fairness is also important to me because I know what judgment feels like. So treating people like a human being is at the core of who I am and what I'm about, still today and always has been. And if you lace that with fairness and then you lace that with that sense of belonging, you talk about what's your story. Every single person I meet has a story. And in that are some really hero moments, and in that are some real trauma and tragic moments. And it's like, I'm still yet to see, feel, and hear the growth of a human through the glorious moments. The stories of growth always come through the dark moments.
Yeah, that's so true.
And when you hear about these boxing champions that, they get celebrated in 12 rounds of 3 minutes, and then they turn around and go, no, I won this world championship at 5 a.m. in the dark on the country lanes on my own. And it's that sort of stuff. So I think we grow massively through trauma. So if I come at it with judgment, and if I come at it with I'm part of the system, I'm just going to get faced with the same old thing. So my attitude was always, I don't care about your situation in the nicest sense. I don't care about how you've ended up here. I don't need to ask you what crime you did. I don't care about what risks it tells me on the paperwork, whether you're violent or... This was a funny thing. Like you pick up somebody from a police station, it says they're violent on their form. And you're like, what specifically how were they violent? Are they resisted arrest? I'm like, has anyone never resisted arrest? Yeah. That doesn't equally automatically mean violent. So some information...
Take me, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So some information's good, but actually the laziness and the complacency that comes with it. Now, I'm now potentially going to treat this human being differently because I've got a bit of information which is actually wrong. So I learned to kind of disregard that and just meet the person where they're at, how they're feeling energetically, their mood, their anger, their frustration and stuff. I had to find ways to disarm them and the situation to be able to get to a point of neutrality to go, right, what do we do from here? How you feeling, right? We've got a job to do. And that was it. I've got a job to do. I'm not here to fight you. I'm not here to this. I've got a job to do. And I want to help you, but I can't do it for you. Yeah. And that's exactly the same as me today. Like how many times have we had those kind of conversations in it's like, it's your business. You've got the best ideas and I can poke around and dig you in the ribs and challenge you and share some stories. But fundamentally, it's yours. I can't do it for you. I'm not a shareholder.
You're not a shareholder.
And I wasn't a shareholder in their lives then, it's like, it's up to them. So if they want to go on and reoffend, if they want to, if any of my team want to, it's like being a leader in a business and managing a team and then leading them through change and all that sort of stuff. If somebody wants to act like a tool and behave like a tool, so be it. But we've got to have some really candid conversations to turn around and go consequences, and cause and effect. I do that with my children. I do that with friends. I do it with myself, and it's like how I'm behaving and how I'm, what I'm saying, what I'm doing, how is that impacting what I'm getting and my results? Because true accountability is that. Do you know what I mean? So facing those people in different situations, different walks of life was always like, how do I meet you where you're at? Not just as a buzzword or a phrase. I need to read people quickly, read situations quickly, adapt to that, adapt my tone and pace and volume to be non-threatening and supportive. So
Yeah, no, that's great. That would have taught you a lot of lessons for that sort of stint of your career.
Yeah.
Moving forward in terms of your vocation, so that was very early on the glimpse of what it was to look like being a coach. You
Yeah.
know, helping people, and ultimately having those purposeful conversations. Um, on that theme, purposeful conversations.
Hmm.
What does that mean to you when you have a purposeful conversation? What's the goal in having a purposeful conversation?
Ultimately, to help people think and act differently. I think we get really stuck, and I think we're conditioned to. So, education set up for blue collar working, it's out of date. The whole system is broken. You know, we're not training people for modern life. We're not preparing them for modern life at all. So, I'm a parent of two, like I said, two biological children. I'm a parent of two stepchildren, and stepping into a family where they've lost a parent as well. Stepping into any family and blending families can be tough. It's equally, it's kind of heightened toughness when you have that. So my attitude has always been, I've never talked to my kids in gaga goo goo land, but chatter matters. I remember that as a thing as a parent growing up. It's like a government scheme, like chatter matters. But I'd always treat and talk to my kids like they're grown ups. So there's cause and effect. It's like, if you want to say this and be this way, it's going to have this impact. If you want a different result, lowering the tone of voice, lowering your position and kind of getting down to their height and stuff, but having a conversation that is more adult rather than child and parent. So my son, a couple of years ago, for example, we had a tough conversation, which was, I love you. I don't love who you're choosing to be right now. So unpacking that a little bit, I will always love you no matter what you do. I will always love you and I will always support you, and this will always be a safe place for you. The person you're choosing to be right now, these behaviors, this attitude, the things that you're doing, and the person you're choosing to show up as, that's getting you in trouble at school, no, I don't love those behaviors. Understand there's a difference. So take that into work environments or whatever. It's the spectrum's so wide, mate. Like, you're working with a bunch of architects and construction guys. If they're not on the table drawing and doing stuff, back in the old days, it's now on CAD. Like,
CAD,
yeah. But if they're not on the tools, they're not earning. They're fee earning. That's fee earning time. So to take them away and have a coaching conversation with them about the development of the business or the team, it's automatically greeted with a roll of the eyes and because you're taking them away from fee earning time. So it's also fine-tuning that in terms of, if we're going to take time with your team, it has to be a purposeful conversation. So it's all part of my being now, is like, and there's a second element which is huge as well, right? And I hope you feel this as a client, is that too many coaches ask you questions with an answer that they've already got defined in their head. So when you answer your truthful answer to the question, they dismiss that because it's not the one they've got.
Yeah.
So then they'll keep asking you leading questions until you give them the one that they've got in their head, and then they can feel like an accomplished coach. And I'm like, mate, so much of coaching is about shutting up and listening. So
spot on.
Purposeful conversations, a huge part of that is being open to the listening part of a purposeful conversation. If I don't learn and grow from every coaching session, I've talked too much. Do you know what I mean? So it's like there's coaching as a process and coaching certificated and all those kind of things. And then to me, there's the art of coaching, which goes a little bit beyond mastery. And I don't mean that to sound knobbish. I just mean it from a point of view that I care enough about the human being in front of me to allow them to go long enough with whatever's going on to help them get through and find their own answers. Sometimes I have to do a pattern interrupt, which is the thing in psychology where if they're constantly going on a loop of thinking, they're only going to continue to do the same things. So you have to interrupt that pattern of thinking.
Yeah.
But it's asking questions and shutting up and allowing them to kind of go there, no matter how tough it is. Sometimes people will cry and it's like, the need to give them a tissue is my need. They need to feel that sometimes, because in that is gold, in that is change, in that is cause and effect, in that is all the stuff that makes that purposeful conversation land and a different outcome start to shape and form. But it's not for me to conduct where that goes. Yeah. It's me for just to listen and observe. And you might say something flippantly in passing and I might come back to it and go, when you said that, James, what was all that about? Just unpack that for me. Talk to me about that. So sometimes they feel like therapy sessions, and other times they can be very directed and practical. So,
well, whether you're a coach, you're a mentor, you've got to have good communication skills.
Yeah.
And listening is a big part of communication.
Yeah.
And I think that's very often overlooked. And, I struggle with this a lot as an extrovert who likes to talk.
Yeah.
Sometimes I got to listen. I've had to learn that in marriage. Listening is really, really important.
Wait till you become a parent, dude.
Oh, well, there we go. I'll have a greater deal
I'll see you in 6 years. Right, let's redo this again and we'll see.
But yeah, listening is a big part of that. And as a coach, if you're helping somebody, whether that's a business owner, whether that's somebody in a life situation, like, in a job where you were in offender management, that is something that is really important and critical in helping someone, isn't it? Listening.
Yeah. Can I, just to specify on this bit, it's listening to understand.
Okay.
Right. And people, I think way too much of the population, we are listening to react. We're listening to respond. We're listening to our bit next. We're kind of excited to go in. So as we're hearing something, we go, oh, I can't wait to share my bit. And it's like, I think it was a beer advert, stop, it's not ready. It's like, just slow it down and listen to understand. Because in doing that, you'll help the other person properly understand what they mean, not just surface level understand it. Because if you have to say it and repeat it, if it's not something, they'll know that. Yeah. If it becomes something bigger, you got to allow them in that space. So a lot of the time, that listening is about holding space for people. Sorry, mate.
That beer advert is a great segue into something you really enjoyed in life was selling beer.
Yeah. But one of the best companies I've ever worked for.
Really?
Yeah. And I say for because a lot of my career, I've always felt I worked with. But I had such a beautiful time in that organization. Just, nurturing that coaching space, the whole leadership space, and you're in a space where you're selling beer and making people happy. So coming from offender management, which is quite a grey and possibly it can be a little bit doom and gloom at times.
Intense.
Yeah, intense. Yeah. Suddenly you're like, the most intense thing is a pub running out of beer on a bank holiday Monday. Do you know what I mean? And that's not a bad thing. And we had a brilliant portfolio of brands, and no one really knew of the company unless you're in the trade. And it was interesting working for a company that wasn't ego-based in its name, but the brands were the heroes. So each brand had a story. And that was pretty cool because, back in the day, I think Stella Artois had like a £37 million marketing spend annually. That's a crazy number, right? But it was winning awards as like 17 years running for the most successful marketing campaign. It's like, why would you wouldn't drink champagne from a teacup, reassuringly expensive. That was the Stella Artois message. You know what I mean? But that had to tackle the identity it first got when it was the first strong ABV lager into the UK and everyone was drinking 2.3% lager, having 11 pints and driving home back in the day, Suddenly you had 2 points of Stella and you fell off the stool and everyone laughed. So the anger came because people didn't know how to manage it, So yeah, the other beer brand I mentioned earlier by association, but they had it easy when they came in because we'd almost paved the way. But the identity of that brand was quite a difficult one that we had to turn around. It was huge. So learning all the psychology of marketing and branding and how you tell a story over a period of time to turn the battleship of thought and feeling, oh, that's fab. That was incredible.
That's good fun. What was your sort of biggest lesson you learned in that sort of space? Because like you said, you were going from comparing that now to helping people at maybe, if not their darkest moments in life, to then selling something that probably people would need. It's just a competitive thing, isn't it? Because breweries, pubs and restaurants, they probably deal with the breweries anyway, because it's just a choice of, do we go for this one or that one? They want it anyway, right?
Yeah.
What was sort of the biggest lessons you learned, whether that's in branding or marketing or coaching, working in that sort of industry?
Yeah, I take it to the sales bit, really. There was a lot of order capture. I see this still today, like people labeling themselves as sales. I'm working with 2 clients now, and they are very much order capture. They're not sales. And there is
a difference?
Massively. If somebody is phoning you and they're wanting to place an order and you're administrating that order, that's really an order capture role. That's more admin than sales psychology and other things. And controversially...
Because they already want it?
Yeah, absolutely. And they've come in for it. And controversially, if people go to a car garage or people go to a bed centre or a sofa centre, they're not going in there for fish and chips, are they? that you have to try and convert them into something else. They're going there. And this is the other thing, right? You see it in car sales. I've heard people say, well, yeah, we get tire kickers and we get pram pushers in car garages. They were never going to buy a car. And I'm like, are you insane? When you have small children, right, remember this, that you buy these prams that are like a one-up pram. You'd be able to take it out of the boot and like one hand and you can lift the pram. It's special, right? It's because you've got a baby in this hand and it's like, whoa, brilliant. It's marketed, so it never works like that. You end up shaking it in a rage in the car park, right? So just imagine you and Amy sitting there going, what are we doing today, love? What, nothing. Should we go and have a look around a car garage? Are we going to buy a new car? No. Let's just kill some time. But it's raining and we got the kids in the pram. Yes, one of those one-up ones. It'll be fine. And there's a genuine belief within car sales people that they'll look out the window and go, they're not going to buy a car. They're pram pushers. And to me, that the disrespect and the attitude and the missed opportunities is costing the industry millions, right? And I see it in retail, I see it in hospitality, I see it, and it's like there's so much money being left on the table because of basic low-level order capture skills. And I'm like, let's understand people, because sales is effectively being a good human in front of another good human, professionally helping them buy something that they want or need now. It's not selling them something they don't. Professionally help them buy something they want or need now. So if you're in a restaurant, know your sides. Know every single thing on the menu. Taste it. Experience it. So you can wax lyrically about it and upsell it. Not just take their order.
It frustrates me when I go to restaurants and, as somebody who loves ale, I'll ask, what beers have you got? And, I'll have a look.
Yeah.
It's like, what? You should know this.
Yeah,
right? It does frustrate me a bit, but
Remember TGI Fridays? Other brands are available, right? They had a really good strategy because most of the bridge, and there's a science in everything, right?
Okay.
So if you look at where beer placements are in a fridge behind the bar, it was always, from memory this is, top row, far right, was the most, not most expensive brand, but the highest margin brand that's outlet would stock. Because we get taught to read left to right. So we read like A, B, so abacada, and then we form the sounds of the letters, the words, the paragraphs, the sentence, the meanings and stuff. So we're taught to read left to right. So you look at the fridges in the bar and your brain goes left to right. So you're more likely going to choose the beer on the right-hand side of the top row of the fridge. Evidence and market research have improved this, right? So if you've got a beer that you're buying for this and you can sell it for that, it always went in the top right fridge. And that was how you controlled higher margin beers and flow of beers in the fridge and what's the real science in it. Wow. TGI Fridays did something completely different where they didn't have fridges that were visible. They had steel fridges, like aluminium fridges underneath the counter. And because they couldn't see any bottles, people would go, oh, what beers have you got? And they were trained, this month we got a really good deal on Budweiser. This month we got a really good deal on Stella Artois. So they turn around and go, Budweiser. And they go, oh, yeah, I have two of them. So they controlled the sale at the point of sale by hiding it. You know what I mean? So it's a fascinating...
That is fascinating, actually.
Oh, mate, dig into the brewing industry, right? We'll go right back to the monks and how it was, the things that... I remember a story of a monk who was... They used to use, I think it was pig's bladders to carry water. They use pig's guts and intestines and or whatever it is to carry water. And then at the end of a long journey on the pony or whatever, they'd get there and the water was cloudy. So people used to get ill and all that sort of stuff. And this one monk, one day, they'd taken all of the bladders and stuff. So he used the insides of a flatfish. And when he got to the end of his journey, he had these like smaller pouches, but lots of them. When he got to the end of the journey, the water was crystal clear. So the monk's like, oh, there's something in this. Years later, centuries later, that's a thing called finings, which is chopped up fish guts, which they still put in drinks to make it clear and sparkly, which caused a storm a few years ago with the vegan community because it was in wine and they never realised.
Gosh.
So there's loads of fascinating things in that industry that blows my mind that we still use today that we never knew of or kind of thank them for. But last week I was at the licensed trade charity event, and do you know it is all about wellbeing. They launched their wellbeing conference, and what was so good to be there and fall in love again with the industry that I've always loved, but you kind of get out of touch with. What really hit me was just how much of an important part these pubs play in the communities, because they are the people that go in, the patrons that go in. It's a real safe space for a lot of them. And I don't think as a government, they take it seriously enough in terms of from well-being and health. It's not all about drinking and getting drunk. Yeah. It's a community hub. And so many pubs. I grew up in a small village. that had 5 or 6, and by the time I left, there were 3.
Something about having a local, isn't there?
Yeah, but it's that whole you can put your jacket on the bar and you go to the on the hook and you go to the bar and your drink's poured. But there's always a face, there's always it's like the true connectors. We're really glad you came. It's all that kind of thing. There's that space of belonging, which I said is important to me. That exists in pubs. So they're as a trade, drinks and hospitality and restaurants, they're getting hammered everywhere they turn. But I think there's a real importance that they play in communities that isn't being taken seriously and needs to be.
Absolutely, especially in a decline where pubs are closing.
Yeah.
It's ever more important that we sort of support these places because, and as you say, they are getting hammered. Just recently with there's changes with packaging laws and taxes on in beer and things. So energy bills over the years have gone up.
Stupidly, 200%.
It is so difficult to make a profitable business in that sort of space, isn't it?
But also a lot of the supplies that they buy, like coffee and sugar and things like restaurants, so much of the supply products aren't vatable. So they can't even offset their VAT. So everything, there's so many ways they're being hit that's under the radar, and it just needs to be raised to the surface. I'm glad that people in the industry are. Like the Steve, the CEO of the BII, the British Institute of Innkeepers and stuff, they're lobbying Parliament, they're championing this stuff, and they are fighting the fight for the little guy, and that was really lovely to see again. So inspiring stuff.
That's good. Why should business owners have a coach?
I think everyone should have a coach, not just a business owner. So I do, and it's like it doesn't matter how good you think you are, you just can't do it on your own. That would probably be my best answer. It's on my website. I thought of it years ago and I kind of wrote it out on there. And because it is an important factor, ego takes over and we make silly decisions that then cost us more and all that sort of stuff. So ignorance can take over and, that can cause... So who's your sounding board? Who's your critical friend? Who's the person that you turn to? But predominantly... my own journey was there was no one there. I remember I say belonging is important to me because I felt isolation. I promise you, as an adult, there's sometimes nothing more isolating than being a business owner. And that some people think that when you've got a team, it becomes easier. It becomes even more isolating. You can't go in the tea room and say, we've lost a big contract. Don't know if I can afford to pay you next month, boys. So who do you turn to about that conversation? And you can't always go home and talk to your partner because they're fed up you talking about it all the time. It's like, so it is completely...
Chat shop, they'd say in Wales.
Yeah.
Talking shop.
So it's completely isolating. So who's your sounding board? Who's your confidant? Who's the person you can bounce ideas off? But also, who's the person that can help you raise your energy and your motivation levels and stuff? Because we all vibrate at an energy. And when we're down here in the quagmire, everything's tough. But when we just raise our energy up, and for me, that's like 5 minutes of comedy on YouTube, listening to a song and dancing around like an idiot in my own kitchen. But that raises my vibration to go and smash the day. But I'm responsible for that. And then I have a part to play in helping others be responsible for theirs. So I don't think we can do it without coaches and confidants and mentors.
Yeah, that's good. And accountability. There's all sorts of things that really help support people. And you've touched on an important thing there. It's not just a business owner.
Yeah.
I'd feel it'd be a bit weird outside of a business context saying I've got a coach. I'd probably say a mentor.
Yeah.
Would you say mentor and coaches are sort of similar?
No, categorically. Great question. No. So I can't even remember where I read this years ago, right? But an easy analogy, right? There's 4, and these are the different hats that we wear. So at times I'm a mentor, at times I'm a consultant, at times I'm a coach, and at times I'm a counselor, a therapist, right? But if you think of those 4, so coach, consultant, mentor, and counselor, use the analogy of driving. A counselor will help you with overcome your fears and talk about your fears around driving, potentially, fears and concerns. A consultant will tell you the best car to drive. A mentor will share their experiences of driving with you, and a coach will get you in the car driving. So they're all very, very different, and they all have a purpose, and we kind of shift at different hats, but it's like, yeah, they are very, very different. And it's the word coach has been bandied around so easily and so loosely. It's almost become a pantomime dame of itself. I'm not ashamed of being a salesperson. I'm not ashamed of being a coach, but I'm Brooksy. I'm a passionate person that loves life and loves people. And I want everyone to win. I want people to perform, and I want them to, their reasons to do things to be bigger than their excuses not to. You know, and it's so easy to get caught in that quagmire of life that sometimes we just need a little conversation that can change the needle. And
I love that analogy. You don't know where you read that from?
No, it's a book. It would have been a coach. It's
come in.
The exact title I can't. It's the Little Big Book of Coaching, or the Big Little Book of Coaching, or something. There's about 76 different coaching models, right? So the Grow model was the first model I ever came across. Grow model, I can't even remember the guy who did it, but it was in the Tower Coaching, or the Tower Coaching, Tower Coaching. So it's the Tower Coaching. So it's goal, reality, opportunity, wrap up. Brilliant, fantastic coaching model, used as a framework by many. And then somewhere along the line, someone went, "Oh, I'm using this model. I'm not making any money from this. If I added a couple of letters to it, I could license my own model and then train coaches and then make money from licensing every year." So they added 2 letters at the front, RE, and it's now the regrow model. So you've got the grow model, but you've also got the regrow model. And that kind of stuff, I think, is damaging to the industry because people are doing it to make money and license things.
Yeah.
Rather than the purpose of coaching. So it's to have 76 different coaching models. Come on. We don't need all of them. So, but the book was useful, but I remember that analogy, and I'm sure it's in that book.
That is a great analogy because, sometimes we can, even if we're leading our teams, or, we can wear different hats. As a manager, we can wear a mentoring hat, a coaching hat.
Yeah.
And I love that analogy of driving a car because there's all those different gears almost you
need to move into. Yeah.
That's brilliant. I feel there's a part 2, there's a part 3 coming. There's so much we've uncovered already. But I'm just conscious of time. I've really appreciated you sharing some of those insights. Sales Academy.
Yeah.
For those that maybe want to know more about how Sales Academy can help support business owners, entrepreneurs, where might they find you, Adam?
Literally all over social. So Linktree Sales Academy. But if you, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram,
got a podcast?
TikTok. Yeah, mate. Yeah, we got a podcast. Yeah, wherever you. Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, so wherever you want to, wherever you get your podcast, if you look for Think and Act Differently with Sales Academy, you'll find us. Hundreds of episodes, just little musings, thoughts, and conversations that come up without breaking any confidence with clients. But there are regular things that come up. So I'd normally go on and do a musing about something that's troubling people, or that's getting in their way, or that's come up in conversation.
I would recommend anyone listening, watching, give it a listen, give it a watch.
Thank you.
Because they're real gold nuggets. It's something you can put on really quickly and unpack. I definitely encourage you to check them out. And just lastly, we've gotten to hear a little bit about your personal story and your passion for having purposeful conversations. If you could sit here and listen to somebody's story, Adam, whether that's somebody very influential, inspirational, somebody who's really helped you along your journey, and that could be somebody fictional, whose story would you love to hear?
Okay, I've thought about this question a lot because I knew you were going to ask it because I listened to your
Good.
podcast. Right?
That's good.
And I'm going to look at the camera while I say this, not just you. All right? Because it's going to be a call out.
Okay.
All right? Michael Sheen, if you're listening, you need to come and sit in this seat, dude. I have a huge amount of love and respect for you, and I want to hear more about your story, but everything that you do in the community. I live in Baglan now, and I know you're a Port Talbot boy. There's so much that you do, and the way that you've gone about differently in your industry. You're a not-for-profit actor now. You're making huge waves in Wales. Come and have a chat with this guy and share your story on a local level because it matters. So yeah, I'd love to hear you and Michael Sheen having a conversation and give that space and time, mate. Yeah. Make that a bumper edition length episode.
That'd be cool. I mean, what he's done for the National Theatre of Wales
Unbelievable.
Is incredible.
Yeah.
It is absolutely incredible. As somebody who's very passionate about creative industries, the fact the government are not pumping lots more money into creative industries, and he's just gone and sorted it.
Yeah.
Incredible. All with his own money,
Yeah. And such a humble, normal human being, right? And I just love the fact that you could walk past him. He's an everyday person in the street, but he's humble, he's human, he's real, and he wants to make a difference, and he is. He's putting his money where his mouth is. I would class him, and I say this lovingly, as a bit of a maverick, as I am. And I love that he's a bit of a maverick in his industry. So yeah, I'd love to see you sitting down chatting with him. So Michael, come on.
And more importantly, he's Welsh.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, Cymru.
My ancestry is. I'm
Yeah.
50%
All right.
Welsh. I'm 50% Welsh, but yeah.
Brilliant. Adam, thank you so much for sharing some
it's been a
insight in your coaching journey. And and thank you for being my coach. You've taught me a lot over these last few months and years. Where Stori Cymru has gotten to today is credit to you. So thank you for that.
Mate, it's credit to you. Believe me.
Not Amy, me.
Yeah, you and Amy now and the team and stuff. But no, you have to be receptive to some of the challenge and then be open to it. Defensiveness doesn't really get us anywhere. So you are that kind of open and reflective person. You're open to the criticism and the challenge and the praise and recognition. And your shift and the move, and it's great to see. You know, you are building this into a proper film production company. And to be part of that journey, yeah, it's an honour, mate. So well done.